Good, good day, everybody. It might be good morning or good afternoon or good evening for you. We're happy to be here. I'm Ken Ehrman. I'm the product owner of the design team here at CNC Software. Matt Kelly is joining us this morning. Matt's the QC guy on our team. Matt's been involved with Mastercam for close to 20 years, I think, as a user, reseller, and an employee, direct employee. And I've been with CNC about 25 years, been heavily involved in the CAD side of it for almost all of that time. Okay, some of the things that we're going to cover here is modifications in Mastercam in the 2022 release. One of the big pushes that we've made with this release is better support of mesh entities. You know, we know our users have been getting more and more mesh models for manufacturing, and we know that as they come in, it's often that they're not quite ready to be cut, manufactured. And so we've been, in this release, we've done a lot of work with mesh. We've actually added a whole new mesh ribbon, but I'm not going to go there for this demo. I'm going to be focusing mainly on how we've improved and enhanced wireframe support for meshes, and show you kind of some tips and tricks and some workflow. So what we're looking at here is a mesh intake port, complete with valve guide. And this was imported into Mastercam. And as you can see, it is not really the prettiest model. Pretty rough, a lot of flats, not something that we necessarily want to machine. And so what I'm going to be doing over the next few minutes is walking through some processes on how to create, how to take that mesh and use it. And the end result of this is going to be a lofted surface from the results. And so I'm just going to kind of walk you through as we do it and show you what's new while we're going through. So that's the plan. And we're working with something that is like Tech Preview 2 that'll be out in the next couple of weeks, or maybe a week or so. So anyhow, we're going to start, and I'm going to just jump over to my right side view. And what we're going to do in this particular step is I'm just going to create a spline, kind of, I'm just eyeballing it, kind of through the middle here of this port as it sits, and I've got the spline offset out onto the right side. And so I'm going to use this spline to create a draft surface that pierces through this mesh. So I'm just going to jump into surfaces and grab the draft. Go ahead and chain it. Oh, I got it on window. There we go. We'll go back to chain. There we are. Okay. So first thing you're going to notice is that it created the draft surface, but it's using the construction plane of top. So we're just going to change that to right, which is nice. We can now change that on the fly. Prior to 2022, I would have had to have escaped out of the draft function and set my construction plane first and then come in. But we can also change the normal direction on the draft as well. This was kind of an experiment to see how it works. So if I move my cursor over top of the surface, you can see my normal arrow there, and if I want to flip it, I can just click on it. In this particular case, the direction of the normal of the surface doesn't have any bearing on what we're trying to accomplish, though. So now I have my draft surface, and what we're going to do next is we're going to create intersection curves between the mesh and that surface. Now, this is new support in Mastercam 2022. The curve at intersection function now supports meshes, surfaces, solids, all of that. So we've just done that. I'm going to turn off my my draft surface. And so we have these two curves intersecting that mesh where the draft surface came through. Now we're going to use these curves in a few minutes, but the next thing we're going to do is create another two curves. And I could use the draft surface again, but I also want to demonstrate that Surface Project now also supports mesh entities as well. So I'll go ahead and pre-select this. I'm going to jump into Project, and we're going to say Surfaces and Solids, and we'll just go ahead and pick the mesh. So there they are projected. I want to make sure they're going to my active level, which is 5. And so we've got that done. So right away you see that in Mastercam 2022, we've increased a lot of support for our intersection functions, our curve functions to work with mesh entities, which is an important thing when you're trying to get a model ready to be machined. All right, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my mesh, and we're going to go look at it from the right side again. Now, I'm going to use these curves to create a center medial axis, a center medial curve, which is a new function inside of 2026. But before I do that, I want to take the hump out here because that's not going to necessarily give me, it's not necessarily necessary for what I'm trying to achieve. So I'm going to jump into, the blended spline function that's been around for years. I'm going to go ahead and just pick here, here we go. All right, I like the way that looks. All right, so now I have these 4 curves. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to create a center curve. And the idea is this center curve, when we're done, is going to pass through the middle of our mesh. So that's why we created these 4 curves on the outside. So we got our 4 curves. We're going to go over to the curves function on the wireframe tab. Under slice, we're going to pick curve center. Now this function, you're picking chains, so it's not single entities, which is nice. It gives you a lot of flexibility. And I'll go ahead and pick this curve and this curve, and we'll say okay. So now we have this medial curve, this center curve passing through it that is influenced by the curves I've added that I used to select. And it requires a minimum of 2 curves. But as far as I know, there are no limitations on how many curves you can give it. And the curves, inside the interaction here in the panel, if I click on one and reverse it, you'll see how that changes. So if you pick a curve going the wrong direction, I don't know if you can hear the train in the background. Anyhow, you pick the curve in the wrong direction, you can go ahead and reverse it. You can also add more chains. So we're just going to go ahead and add these 4 because 4 chains are going to give us a better definition for that center curve. So I like that. I'm going to turn off the curves that we had at first, and then we'll go ahead and turn our mesh back on. And we'll go into translucent mode so we can see where that curve passes through. So that's a nice curve, nice and smooth. But what I'm going to do here, actually, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to use our new top level editing function. I'll double click, and I'm just going to go ahead and extend that spline just a ½ inch or so. The distance is not important. I just want to make sure that the spline is extending outside of the ends of the mesh because the mesh on the ends isn't necessarily clean. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run refit, our refit spline function, which has been in the software for several releases now. And I'm just going to go ahead and run it on here. And we're going to delete the original. We're going to do our blends. We'll say okay. And what that does is, our original, the intersection curves and our projected curves were all heavily influenced by the topology of the mesh itself. And so that influence could have an effect on our center curve, So by running refit, it tends to smooth those things out and even those things out. All right, so now we have our center curve and we have our mesh. And what I want to do is I want to create cross sections through this mesh that I'm going to use for a loft. Now, prior releases of Mastercam, the only way to do that would have been like curve slice. So if you looked at curve slice from previous releases, didn't support meshes, it does now. So we can go ahead and pick that. Now, one of the things we've done is we've taken that pop-up dialog to establish your plane and actually put it into the slice panel. So I'll just go ahead here. We're going to use the x-axis. We're still waiting on some bitmaps, and I have it set for a spacing. So it gives us these nice cross sections here, but where things get wonky, right, is as we get up into this section. So if I was going to do this with curve slice, I would have to create a bunch of different planes here, and that's not what I want. So that's why we created this next function in 2022 called curve slice along a curve. So for inputs, you can take a mesh, surface, solids, wireframe, just like curve slice by plane, which we renamed. And so I'll go ahead and pick my mesh, and then I'm going to go ahead and pick my along curve. And now what you're seeing is you see these temporary planes that have been spaced along the curve. And each of these planes are perpendicular to the curve itself. So we're looking at that, and I like the way that looks. Let me just jump into the right view. At this end, you know, this spacing here is pretty good because there isn't a lot going on here transition-wise. But when we get into this corner, well, we've got the valve guide hump, and then we've got this sweeping here. So we actually need some more slices in there. And so that's simply done by just coming over here to add. And actually, let me back up a little bit first. The spacing of these plane slices is controlled through 3 different methods. So we default to a number, and we just chose the number 10 so you would see something. And with that number, it's equally divided along our axis. So you could change the margins. You know, you can shrink those. Everything, we're going to leave those alone. But so if I say 12 here, we're going to throw, or 11, you know, we throw 11 in there. We can also choose a distance between. So you can say we're going to do it 1 inch along, or we can actually do a chord height tolerance on the along curve, and it's using that tolerance as the curve changes shape and direction. But for the sake of our demo, we're going to go with a spacing of 10. Now, as I started to say before, it looks good here in this section because it's a very simple transition, but we get into a more detailed area here. And so I need more slices. So we're going to go into modify, and I'm going to pick add. And we're just going to go ahead and notice that we get the green point showing up there. And what it does is it's just recognizing an equal distance between the 2 closest planes next to it. So I'm just going to pick and add some more planes here. And when I'm done, I'm going to hit enter. We're going to go look at this in ISO again. All right, and now actually I'm going to remove this one because I'm going to put an end cap on it, and I don't necessarily need that one. And yeah, we're going to do that. Okay, so I can add and remove slices as needed. And then if I ever just want to reset back to my original 10, I just hit reset. And then we have the margin controls here as well. So when I'm done, I'm just going to check here. Yeah, I like that setting, and we're just going to say okay. And what we've done is we've just created all of those cross sections through that mesh driven along our along curve. Now to get ready for the next step, I'm just going to go ahead and put a cap here on the ends, an edge curve. All right, All right, now we're going to turn off the mesh because I want to create a lofted surface through these cross sections. It's important that we have our seams line up correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my right intersection curves because I want that to be my seam. We'll select everything, and then I'm going to unselect the center and then that outside intersection curve, and then I'm just going to Alt-E hide what we've got. I'm going to jump over into my right view. And so you can see I have my dots turned on here. So on the home page, I've got endpoints turned on. So that's showing me where those splines are starting and ending, and I want to get all of that organized along this right intersection curve. So what I'm going to do is we'll go back to wireframe under the modify section and grab trim many, select everything, I'm going to unselect that, and then I'm going to use this as my trimming curve. Now I've used this already this morning, and so it was already set to break, but you can see by the highlight here where the trim is being made. So I've just basically established a new endpoint, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. All right, my next step is I want to recreate each of these cross sections, starting from that desired edge and walk all the way around. So what I'm going to use is the spline from curves function. And we're just going to walk through and chain them. So this will take a minute. It's a little manual, but it's not terrible. Zoom in here. And if you make a mistake and get the wrong direction, you know, you've got the controls in the chaining panel to flip and to move the start and the end points. Actually, let's check our directions. I might have messed that one up. Let's reverse that guy. All right, so there's an issue with that particular spline. So I'm just going to unselect it. And we're going to say, okay. So now all of our endpoints are lined up. I'm going to come back here. You know, you can do this demo 50 times and everything is fine until you're actually doing it live. And let's see here, spline from curves. Try this again. There, we like that. Okay. All right. So now what I've done is I've got them all going the same direction, I hope. And I'm going to turn off my right intersection at this point. Now, when we created these cross sections, we created them on the topology of the mesh itself. So it's going to have all of the flats and sharps that were present in the mesh. And we want to get rid of those to get a better quality spine. So we're going to use refit again. So we're just going to select them all, run refit with the blending option, delete the originals. And now what we'll do is we're going to create a lofted surface now. And I'm going to use the window method because I don't want to go through and manually chain them if I don't have to. So I'm going to set my construction plane to front. I'm going to choose loft, and we're going to grab our window. There's our search. So that's our they're all going the same direction, which is good. And I just happen to know that I actually want them to go the other way. So we're going to hit OK. And so there we have a lofted surface created through those cross sections that were developed from the mesh itself. So if we turn on, let's see, let's select all mesh and all surfaces, and we'll hide. I said we'll hide Alt T. There we go. So now you can see we've got the mesh and the surface superimposed on one another, and you see how closely they're following. So these tools, right, are all part of 2022, and it's all part of this, our CAD for CAM approach to just be able to give users more power to import mesh and actually do something with them. We do have a lot more work that we've done in the mesh area, and we'll probably have a future seminar on that. We'll make Matt do that one. And so that's what I have prepared to show you today. Matt, do we have questions we need to answer?
There was only one question. Just when you were doing your chaining, they said, can you do a group chain? So I'm assuming they're asking if you could window the chain. You kind of showed that when you were initially chaining, the purpose of it was to get all the, when you're making your splines, to get all the start points in the same location.
Correct, right. When I was using the chain on the cross sections the first time, the direction was important because that has a downstream effect on the loft and the direction of how the loft syncs up and everything.
And that was it. And same person just had mentioned that it looked like when you were having difficulty at the end, it just looked like there was it was broken. The chain was broken at the last chain there, but you got
yeah,
all
I
that
suspect that's what it was. There was a gap or something in there that I didn't see. Yep.
Yep. And that's and good work, Ken. That's someone just said.
Well, it's all really, we have an excellent team of developers in the CAD group. Just, I don't know, 5 or 6 guys. Some have been with the company a short time and some many, many years. And we handle close to 200 functions, and they're really reliable and dependable, and they turn out a lot of good work. So it makes it pretty easy for Matt and I to show things and that kind of stuff. So,
so they're
this is just what's that?
I'm sorry, they were just asking if it's available now, 2022. We have a free, like a TP release for.
That's right. Tech Preview 2 will probably be out next week or so. And that's where you'll see the create center curve. You'll see the curve slice along a curve. Those are in there. The top level editing I showed you is in Tech Preview 1. A lot of the mesh functionality is in Tech Preview 1, although Tech Preview 2 has the intersection to mesh, and it also has the modify at intersection function as well as in Tech Preview 2. So you find that here. And so that's where you could have a bunch of wireframe entities passing through a mesh and find that intersection, whether you want to break or trim or create points or whatever. So, but there's a lot of good stuff in TP1 and more coming in TP2 and even more after that. So, yep, we're excited and actually want to encourage anybody who's an official beta site and dealer to get in there and start exercising some of those things, just to kind of get the hang of it and just to kind of ask us questions as well. There's a whole mesh ribbon with lots of functionality in TP1 and more coming you'll see in TP2 and beyond as well.
All right, and we haven't had any more questions, Ken, so good job.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody's attendance today. And again, Graham had mentioned to us earlier that recordings of this will be available. Well, got a question?
Yeah, we do. The question just came in. Is there any tool to prevent STL, to prepare an STL in order to be able to apply those shown features? Is there any tool to prepare it? No, the STL is, so what we've done in this release is we're focusing in on working with STL mesh files, and we want to make it so that you can work with them like you can with a surface or a solid in some ways. So we do have some tools that can modify mesh in different ways. You'll see coming down the pike. But like in here, Ken's just displaying the decimation, refine. You can refine a mesh. We have some fill hole options, trimming to planes, trimming to surfaces. So yeah, he just took that mesh and just worked with it. So
Right, right. Yeah, we took that in its state and were able to create something out of it. Yep.
and the reason he was refining those curves is because the facet has, I mean, the mesh has a lot of facets on it, so you're going to get a lot of strange points in there. So that's where the refining the spline comes in to help it out. So, all right. I think
Yeah,
that's it.
again,
No
we
more.
encourage you to grab TP1 or TP2 and exercise it a little bit. Give us your feedback. Give us anything you find that doesn't look right, because the sooner you find it, the sooner we can get it addressed and get ready for public beta after the first of the year.
All right. Oh, okay. This came in. Can we make a solid from it? No.
No,
We,
no.
we're
Well,
not there yet. Well, I guess.
if we can take the surface and thicken it, right? Now, in this particular case, that's not going to work, because when you get down into this valve guide area, there's a lot of twists and turns and almost some foldovers that the surfaces can deal with and solids can't. But in the right shape, you could take that surface and then convert it to a sheet body. Well, I could convert this to a sheet body now. I shouldn't do this live, but what the heck, right? We're all friends. So now that's a sheet body. Now, if the topology supports it, you could thicken that and make that a closed solid body. But and there might be ways to put caps on this and sew it together to make it a closed solid body. I haven't tried that in this case, but it is there is no direct mesh to surface or mesh to solid capability at this point.
And we had a quick question regarding the in the upper right-hand corner, where it says standard, Ken. That's a new thing for simple or standard viewing, displaying Mastercam.
Sure.
So it's basically education can use a more simplified ribbon. So they're working on trying to make Mastercam, I guess, less intimidating maybe to some that get in here. So they have a simplified ribbon bar.
Yeah.
Ribbon bar.
Our team wasn't really involved in this. This is a different team heading that up, and I think it's kind of the education and training department. But I think this is kind of a replacement for QuickPart, and so you can go to a simplified ribbon on the fly. So that may or may not be important. Maybe you've got some customers that are intimidated by everything they're looking at, and they want to see something a little less on the ribbons themselves.
All right, that was the last question. Oh, thanks. Yeah. All right, yeah, just
hey, we have time.
Yeah, any more questions? We're here.
That's right.
All right. Nothing so far. Looks like we got it covered, Ken.
Okay.
Do we support PMI? Do we support PMI, Ken? PMI. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, please.
We have, do we support MBD? We don't have the MBD in Mastercam yet.
Right, correct. Right now, that's something that's being imported, and we can display those things, but we're not actually creating those the control frames and the GD&T stuff at this point. They can be displayed if you import it, but we're not creating them at this point.
Okay, yeah, they're saying when creating the curve, does it create arcs or line when drawing an arc? And basically, when you sliced it, we were just putting splines on there.
Yeah, you can. There is an option. It will try to simplify the results, right? So if it can draw a line, it will. But in this case, everything was pretty spline would be the solution. So there is an option on the second on that advanced tab there to just force everything into a single spline, or you can leave it individual entities. Let's try something here. Taking risks. So I'm going to take that sheet body I created and the two flat surfaces I just threw on the ends, and we'll see if we can sew that. Let's see now. It's a closed solid body. So at this point, we might be able to use it in a Boolean operation. Again, we're going to be limited by this big giant knuckle in here as to whether Parasolids is going to tolerate that or not. Actually, you know what? While we're here, I'll show you something cool. I probably shouldn't do this. It's going to bite me.
We're going
I haven't
off.
crashed yet today, so let's go, right?
Ken loves to go without a net.
We're all friends here. Come on. Come on, Microsoft, don't fail me. Oh, here we go. So this may not be the perfect part for this kind of example, but what I can do is I can use that slice along a curve and create circular slices around this solid. So wireframe, curve slice along a curve. We'll just pick this body. I want the whole body. Let's go back here. Hold on a second. Reselect all. Give me the body. Now here's our curve. So we'll get slices along there. And we'll turn off, we'll just grab all of our wireframe, Alt-E. Let me turn off those endpoints. So that curve slice along a curve really gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of what your results might be and what you're looking for. So that was just another example I remembered. All right, is it time for me to shut up?
We don't have any more questions. So I think the PMI thing was basically says product and manufacturing information, which I believe Ernie put in there, MBD, same kind of thing. So you answered that.
Yeah.
So I think we're good on the question. So
all right.
I would just say again, this is recorded and this will be on the Mastercam YouTube page later on, and keep trying the new features. Get in there and mess with it.
Yeah, and thank you all for coming. And if you have other questions, don't hesitate to ask them. You know our email addresses, use the forum, whatever.
So there's a couple other questions that just came in that I think will
well, go ahead and ask.
Answer after. It says 120. It's a 2020 related. It says on 2020 change view, C plane can't follow view plane. Need to click planes manager.
That's a setting in the planes manager in the follow options. You have that control here. It was uncoupled and broken out into different things. So that's how that is now controlled since, I guess it was 2020 when that changed.
Okay. It says, is this parametric CAD? We're not, it's not a parametric CAD.
No. you know, the closest thing to that is within the solid operations, you can go in and edit an operation and change a value and it will update the solid body, but it is not parametric or constraint driven, like when you think of SolidWorks or something like that. All right. Again, thank you for coming. Appreciate your
Thanks, everybody.
attendance. Bye.